Hello, listeners, and welcome to tonight's segment of the Magician Bedtime Story. We're catching up on chapter 3, and we left off Colgan and Tully discussing the future of Pug and the trouble he was having getting into his magic. And so if you'd like to get yourself a cuppa, get cozy, hit pause while you do all of that, and then you can hit play when you're ready to get snuggled in and listen to tonight's reading. Here we go. We are catching up on chapter 3, The Magician. Get snuggled in, guys. Every sixth day, the boys and girls who worked in the castle were allowed to spend the afternoon as they saw fit. The boys, apprentice age and younger, were a loud and boisterous lot. Sorry, guys. The girls worked in the service of the ladies of the castle, cleaning and sewing as well as helping in the kitchen. They all gave a full week's work, dawn to dusk and more, each day, but on the sixth day of the week they gathered in the courtyard of the castle, near the princess's garden. Most of the boys played a rough game of tag involving the capture of a ball of leather stuffed hard with rags by one side amid shoves and shouts, kicks and occasional fistfights. All wore the oldest clothes, for rips, bloodstains and mudstains were common. The girls would sit along the low wall by the princess's garden, occupying themselves with the gossip about the ladies of the duke's court. They nearly always put on their best skirts and blouses, and their hair shone from washing and brushing. Both groups made a great display of ignoring each other, and both were equally unconvincing. Pug ran to where the game was in progress. As was usual, Thomas was in the thick of the fray, sandy hair flying like a banner, shouting and laughing above the noise. Amid elbows and kicks, he sounded savagely joyous, as if in the incidental pain made the contest all the more worthwhile. He ran through the pack, kicking the ball high in the air, trying to avoid the feet of those who sought to trip him. No one was quite sure how the game had come into existence, or exactly what the rules were, but the boys played with a battlefield intensity, as their fathers had years before. Pug ran onto the field and placed a foot before Rolf, just as he was about to hit Thomas from behind. Rolf went down in a tangle of bodies, and Thomas broke free. He ran toward the goal, and, dropping the ball in front of himself, kicked it into a large overturned barrel, scoring for his side. While other boys yelled in celebration, Rolf leaped to his feet and pushed aside another boy to place himself directly in front of Pug. Glaring out from under thick brows, he spat at Pug. "Try that again, and I'll break your legs, Sand Squint." The sand squint was a bird of notoriously foul habits, not the least of which was leaving eggs in other birds' nests so that its offspring were raised by other birds. Pug was not about to let any insult of Rolf's pass unchallenged. With the frustrations of the last few months only a little below the surface, Pug was feeling particularly thin-skinned this day. With a leap he flew at Rolf's head, throwing his left arm around the stockier boy's neck. He drove his right fist into Rolf's face and could feel Rolf's nose squash under the first blow. Quickly both boys were rolling on the ground. Rolf's greater weight began to tell, and soon he sat astride Pug's chest, driving his fat fists into the smaller boy's face. Thomas stood by helpless, for as much as he wanted to aid his friend, the boy's code of honour was as strict and inviolate as any noble's. Should he intervene on his friend's behalf, Pug would never live down the shame. Thomas jumped up and down, urging Pug on, grimacing each time. Pug was struck as if he felt the blows himself. Pug tried to squirm out from under the larger boy, causing many of his blows to slip by, striking dirt instead of Pug's face. Enough of them were hitting the mark, however, so that Pug soon began to feel a queer detachment from the whole procedure. He thought it strange that everybody sounded so far away, and that Rolf's blows seemed not to hurt. His vision was beginning to fill with red and yellow colours, when he felt the weight lifted from his chest. After a brief moment, things came into focus, and Pug saw Prince Arutha standing over him. his hand firmly grasping Rolf's collar. While not as powerful a figure as his brother or father, the prince was still able to hold Rolf high enough so that the stable boy's toes barely touched the ground. The prince smiled. Sorry, just getting a drink of water. The prince smiled, but without humour. I think the boy has had enough, he said quietly, eyes glaring. Don't you agree? His cold tone made it clear he wasn't asking for an opinion. Blood still ran down Rolf's face from Pug's initial blow as he choked out a sound the prince took to mean agreement. Arutha let go of Pug and let go of Rolf's collar, and the stable boy fell backward to the laughter of the onlookers. The prince reached down and helped Pug to his feet. Holding the wobbly boy steady, Arutha said, I admire your courage, youngster, but we can't have the wits beaten out of the Duchy's finest young magician, can we? His tone was only slightly mocking, and Pug was too numb to do more than stand and stare at the younger son of the Duke. The prince gave him a slight smile and handed him over to Thomas, who had come up next to Pug, a wet cloth in hand. Pug came out of his fog as Thomas scrubbed his face with the cloth, and felt even worse when he saw the princess and Roland standing only a few feet away as Prince Arutha returned to their side. To take a beating before the girls of the keep was bad enough. To be punished by a lout like Rolf in front of the princess was a catastrophe. Emitting a groan that had little to do with his physical state, Pug tried to look as much like someone else as he could. Thomas grabbed him roughly. Try not to squirm around so much. You're not all that bad off. Most of this blood is Rolf's anyway. By tomorrow, his nose will look like an angry red cabbage. So will my head. Nothing so bad. A black eye perhaps, too, with a swollen cheek thrown into the bargain. On the whole, you did rather well. But next time you want to tangle with Rolf, wait until you've put on a little more size, will you? Pug watched as the prince led his sister away from the sight of battle. Roland gave him a wide grin, and Pug wished himself dead. Pug and Thomas walked out of the kitchen, dinner plates in hand. It was a warm night, and they preferred the cooling ocean breeze to the heat of the scullery. They sat on the porch, and Pug moved his jaw from side to side, feeling it pop in and out. He experimented with a bite of lamb and put his plate to one side. Thomas watched him. Can't eat? Pug nodded. Jaw hurts too much. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees and chin on his fist. I should have kept my temper. Then I would have done better. Thomas spoke from around a mouthful of food. Master Fannin says a soldier must keep a cool head at all times or he'll lose it. Pug sighed. Culgan said something like that. I have some drills I can do that make me relax. I should have used them. Thomas gulped a heroic portion of his meal. Practicing in your room is one thing. Putting that sort of business into use while someone is insulting you to your face is quite another. I would have done the same thing, I suppose. But you would have won. Probably, which is why Rolf would never have come at me. His manner showed he wasn't being boastful, merely stating things as they were. Still, you did all right. Old Cabbage Nose will think twice before picking on you again. I'm sure. And that's what the whole thing is about anyway. Pug said, What do you mean? Thomas put down his plate and belched. With a satisfied look at the sound of it, he said, With bullies, it's always the same. Whether or not you can do best doesn't matter. What is important is whether or not you'll stand up to them. Rolf may be big, but he's a coward under all the bluster. He'll turn his attention to the younger boys now and push them around a bit. I don't think he'll want any part of you again. He doesn't like the price. Thomas gave Pug a broad and warm smile. That first punch you gave him was a beaut, right square on the beak. Pug felt a little better. Thomas eyed Pug's untouched dinner. You going to eat that? Pug looked at his plate. It was fully laden with hot lamb, greens and potatoes. In spite of the rich smell, Pug felt no appetite. No, you can have it. Thomas scooped up the platter and began shoving the food into his mouth. Pug smiled. Thomas had never been known to stint on food. Pug returned his gaze to the castle wall. I felt like such a fool. Thomas stopped eating with a handful of meat halfway to his mouth. He studied Pug for a moment. You too? Me too what? Thomas laughed. You're embarrassed because the princess saw Rolf giving you a thrashing. Pug bridled. It wasn't a thrashing. I gave as well as I got. Thomas whooped. There, I knew it. It's the princess. Pug sat back in resignation. I suppose it is. Thomas said nothing, and Pug looked over at him. He was busy finishing off Pug's dinner. Finally, Pug said, and I suppose you don't like her. Thomas shrugged. Between bites, he said, Our Lady Carline is pretty enough, but I know my place. I have my eye on someone else anyway. Pug sat up. Who? He asked, his curiosity piqued. I'm not saying, Thomas said with a sly smile. Pug laughed. It's Neela, right? Thomas' jaw dropped. How did you know? Pug tried to look mysterious. We magicians have our ways. Thomas snorted. Some magician. You're no more a magician than I am a knight captain of the king's army. Tell me, how did you know? Pug laughed. It's no mystery. Every time you see her, you puff up in that tabard of yours and preen like a bantam rooster. Thomas looked troubled. You don't think she's on to me, do you? Pug smiled like a well-fed cat. She's not on to you, I'm sure. He paused. If she's blind and all the other girls in the keep haven't pointed it out to her 100 times already. A woe-begone look crossed Thomas's face. What must the girl think? Pug said. Who knows what girls think? From everything I can tell, she probably likes it. Thomas looked thoughtfully at his plate. Do you ever think about taking a wife? Pug blinked like an owl caught in a bright light. I never thought about it. I don't know if magicians marry. I don't think they do. Nor soldiers, mostly, but Master Fannin says a soldier who thinks about his family is not thinking about his job. Thomas was silent for a minute. Pug said, It doesn't seem to hamper Sergeant Garden or some of the other soldiers. Thomas snorted as if those exceptions merely proved his point. I sometimes try to imagine what it would be like to have a family. You have a family, stupid. I'm the orphan here. I mean a wife, rockhead. Thomas gave Pug his best you're too stupid to live look. And children someday, not a mother and father. Pug shrugged. The conversation was turning to provinces that disturbed him. He never thought about these things, being less anxious to grow up than Thomas. He said, I expect we'll get married and have children, if that's what we're supposed to do. Thomas looked very seriously at Pug, so the younger boy didn't make light of the subject. I've imagined a small room somewhere in the castle, and I can't imagine who the girl would be. He chewed his food. There's something wrong with it, I think. Wrong? As if there's something else I'm not understanding. I don't know. Well, if you don't know, how am I supposed to? Thomas suddenly changed the topic of conversation. We're friends, aren't we? Pug was taken by surprise. Of course we're friends. You're like a brother. Your parents have treated me like their own son. Why would you ask something like that? Thomas put down his plate, troubled. I don't know. It's just that sometimes I think this will all somehow change. You're going to be a magician, maybe travel over the world, seeing other magicians in faraway lands. I'm going to be a soldier, bound to follow my lord's orders. I'll probably never see more than a little part of the kingdom, and that only as an escort in the Duke's personal guard, if I'm lucky. Pug became alarmed. He had never seen Thomas so serious about anything. The older boy was always the first to laugh and seemed never to have a worry. I don't care what you think, Thomas. Nothing will change. We will be friends no matter what. Thomas smiled at that. I hope you're right. He sat back and the two boys watched the stars over the sea and the lights from the town framed like a picture by the castle gate. And that is where I'm going to leave it tonight, lovely listeners. I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you for the next installment. I wish you a very, very good night. Lovely, lovely, sweetest dreams.